And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Welcome to Odd Reality Radio, the show designed to generate thought through entertainment. Join us as we explore the strange and unexplained, the unanswered and the unbelievable on Odd Reality Radio.
An error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it.
Blah. We're at over 50 minutes, so
nice.
We're good on time there.
Edit it down to 12. We'll have a good show.
Fuck yeah. Welcome to Odd Reality Radio. This is your host, Ty West.
And I'm Joshua Ray.
And it's been a minute since we've been behind the mics, man.
It has been.
I'm pretty fucking happy to be back for sure.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, on today's show, we're gonna take a little trip on a timeline of darkness in the heart of Los Angeles. And we'll be checking into one of the nation's most mysterious hotels, the Cecil Hotel.
Which is now known as...
It's now known as the Stay on Main.
Stay on Main.
But first, I'd like to share an odd little shot in history involving molasses and death at the other end of the country in Boston, Massachusetts. Are you familiar with the Boston Molassacre of 1919?
Did you just say massacre?
No.
Molassacre.
Molassacre.
No, I'm not familiar.
When I read it, it was hard to say. It's easy to read. It's more palatable to the eye than it is to say. But in the north end of Boston in January of 1919, one of the worst industrial accidents in our nation's history occurred. The Great Boston Molassacre of 1919. Now, our story begins with a man named Arthur P. Gell, who was the treasurer of the Purity Distilling Company. And Arthur was an opportunist. And when he saw the opportunity to cash in on the munitions industry during World War I by purchasing 2.5 million gallons of molasses from either Cuba or Puerto Rico, I don't know which one's accurate, I saw both in my research, but and also looking into it, molasses can be refined into a form of alcohol used in manufacturing weapons. And in 1919, that was a market worth tapping into with World War I. So, Arthur Gell wasn't really a forward thinker, and he didn't give much thought to a plan for storage of this 2.5 million gallons of molasses.
It's a lot of molasses.
So, it's already on its way. In a ship, and in a hasty move, he does apply to get a permit for only the foundation. He doesn't get a building permit because that would entail having to deal with all the pesky building inspectors. And when all was said and done, the tank stood 58 feet tall and 90 feet in diameter.
Holy shit. When was this? What year again?
This is I believe it was finished in 1915.
Oh, wow.
And they got their first shipment, it was like the day or the week of it being finished. And now get this. Arthur decides that instead of filling this entire tank with water to test this thing's structural integrity, he fills it with 6 inches.
6 inches. Out of 58 feet?
Out of 58 feet. And says...
That's a surefire way to test the structural integrity.
I thought so. And then, when it holds, he says, it's ready to use.
Wow.
So they filled it with molasses.
Molasses is super light, right?
Extremely.
No, really? 6 inches? That's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, what the hell's the point? You're just wasting your own money at that point. If you're not going to even try to test it, fully, then why would you put what you just spent all your money on in? That's stupid.
Well, what's funny is technicians noticed that the tanks seemed to be leaking molasses around the seams and rivets, and it supposedly was pooling up at the base of the tank, and the local neighborhood kids would come and eat this sweet mess, and one of the technicians mentioned all of this to Arthur Gell, and his response was, oh, never mind. We'll just paint it.
Wow.
And so that's what they did. They painted it brown. And that was the fix.
Seals it in.
Yeah.
Good lead paint.
Absolutely. I'm sure, yeah. Back in 1919, it was most likely the cheapest paint. And it sounds like this guy was extremely into cutting corners.
Yeah.
So, move it forward to January 15th. And just to point out, that's amazing that it held for 4 years. Mm-hmm. But January 15th, roughly about noon, on 529 Commercial Street, it's a beautiful, sunny day when all the residents heard this low rumble and felt the ground shake. And it was followed by what some people say was resemblant of a machine gun firefight as the rivets gave way and the bolt heads popped off of the bolts, shooting away at massive speeds as the tank exploded. This is when a 30 to 40 foot wall of molasses spread out in all directions, crushing and destroying everything in its wake, smashing entire homes, buildings, freight cars, people, animals, everything.
Wow.
And when all is said and done, 21 people died, and another 150 were injured.
So, what was he doing with the molasses again? Why were they storing it there? What were they using it for?
He was using it to refine, to become some type of munition for the war. So, making bombs, I would assume. And
just seems like a long time for...
Well, the way that they purify it and get the alcohol, they can get a really, really pure, highly flammable type of alcohol, highly combustible. So it was probably,
That's interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, I didn't either. After looking into it, there's all kinds of things they do. They can actually make rum out of molasses as well. They refine it and distill it, and then it becomes rum as well. So there's cool. All kinds of good shit that molasses is doing other than covering pancakes in city streets, apparently. So
yeah.
There was a local resident who was a stonecutter and a survivor of the flood whose hair turned white overnight after the shock of the incident.
Whatever.
That's what they say.
They lied.
It did cause the equivalent of today's money, $100 million worth of damage.
Wow.
And some people say that it took anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months to clean the entire thing up. And
it's edible, right?
Yeah, the kids were eating it right off the tank before it exploded. Now, the United States Industrial Alcohol Company was eventually charged with the negligence and forced to pay $1 million in damages, which is a very little victory for those who lost their homes, their lives, and the loved ones in the incident, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But, another weird thing is that some people say that you can still smell molasses on a hot day in northern Boston today.
Oh, I bet it soaked into everything all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Well, I'm just curious. I'd like to go up and see. It'd be one of the only reasons I'd have to want to go to Boston. I'm not much of a large population people person, so New York's not on the top of my list. No, Boston's not on the top of my list. So, but
I was actually thinking about that the other day, just how it was a stupid Geico commercial, and there it was in New York, and
right.
I was like, God, I don't know how they deal with it, like just being jammed into all the, you know,
sardine people.
Yeah, everything is just, I would go insane, and then, but also I think that it makes them kind of friendlier in a way. I don't know if they used to say that they're rude, I guess, but you have to talk to people, that strangers, and you get used, you know, I think
some toleration, because there's not, you know,
you can't get away from them.
True.
Yeah, I was like, the
only thing that I would go to New York for would be to stay in Nikola Tesla's room.
Oh, no doubt.
That's the only thing I would go for, and I'd probably just stay there and maybe go to a restaurant if I could find out one of them
floorboards and shit,
favorited.
Looking for fucking secrets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Peeling back wallpaper, dealing with the fines later on.
Sorry, I don't know what happened to the room. Just bill me.
Just claim it was raccoons or some shit. Yeah. Come to find out it's not possible. But anyway, that's the first edition of the Odd Shots. I think that you know, we'll cover anything from odd shots in history to odd shot updates. Could be anything from the news to, you know, something that we wanted to update from a previous episode.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
But
speaking of previous episodes, did you watch that History Channel episode on Tesla? And
I didn't.
It was probably one of the best ones that I've seen of theirs so far.
Really? Is it a recent release?
Yeah, it was last Friday, and he had the way they described Tesla's view of the world, of how he imagined it would be once his Wardenclyffe Tower was complete, and multiples of them, and then you wouldn't have the different kind of craft. Zero, what's it called? Zero technology. Anti-gravity, 0 point technology.
Yeah, 0 point technology.
So, yeah, or whatever it is, but they were talking about how they would basically, the only way I can describe it is wrap the craft with electricity, you know, so it would just be on the surface of it, it would just be large amounts of electricity, and that would cause the craft to lift.
Really?
And so you'd have these Wardenclyffe towers all over the place, and these things would be anti-gravity, and they said that he was even talking about sending that electricity to other planets.
That's awesome.
And so all these craft that could have been, if that type of idea was to be given the possibility, or
if only it was fostered.
But it was so just amazing, and I'm like, that's why I feel like everything's wrong, because I know that we're supposed to be further, and it just doesn't seem right. And
well, I feel a shift in what's going on, and let's hope that it's.
I do too, but they were also talking about, which was really sad, that they've been able to reproduce wireless lighting up to 7 feet.
Oh,
wow.
7
and
feet.
That's 100 and something years after he was broadcasting at probably miles.
Right.
Yeah, that's so sad. Where the fuck are our scientists?
Well, they're busy trying to cure, you know, erectile dysfunction, and
problems.
Hair loss.
Anyways, yeah, I hate the Tesla stuff. It makes me depressed.
I love hearing about it because I'm so new, but something else that I don't really love hearing about so much is today's main topic. And the only reason I don't love hearing about it, and at the same time it's a love-hate thing, because I do love hearing about it because it is so strange, and that's just kind of my neck of the woods, but it's the Cecil Hotel, or Hotel Hell. I've kind of come to rename it after doing the research.
Dun, dun.
Yeah. It's a pretty dark history, the history of this downtown Los Angeles hotel, and it begins in the 1920s. Now, to take us back to the 1920s LA, we've got the major Hollywood film studios were finally exploding in popularity because the technology was becoming more accessible for the homes, and again, theaters were probably popping up more and more because it was a fun recreational thing that, again, we could monetize and make money on. So that's popping up. In fact, in 1922, Harry Chandler, the news baron of the Los Angeles Times, erected the Hollywood sign, which originally actually read Hollywood Land Development. And a storm in 1943 knocked down most of the sign, and subsequently, when they restored it, they chose to replace just the word Hollywood. So that's why we have the Hollywood sign.
That's interesting.
Now, the oil boom was also happening in the 1920s, with cars becoming more affordable. Exactly, I know. But, again, it's the oil industry saw this large increase because of the demand and popularity, and then an increase in their income as well, of course. And one more 1920s LA fact that you might not know that the listener may enjoy as well is, in 1929, John Clinton Porter, a former member of the KKK, was elected the mayor of Los Angeles.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep. Now,
it's too bad they didn't have the internet. Everybody would have known.
Oh, I don't know if it was a secret. I mean, I wasn't able to find too much, but
what year were blacks able
1929, and then I don't know. We're talking the 50s or 60s during the Civil Rights Movement, I believe.
Yeah, so
right?
Obviously, they didn't have a say.
Well, to bring us back to the Cecil Hotel, in 1927, in the heat of downtown Los Angeles, on 640 South Main Street to be specific, the Cecil Hotel was built. And originally it was intended for businessmen who may need to stay just a night or two, but sadly it was overshadowed by all the other hotels that sprang up in the area. And according to the book LA Observed, Elizabeth Short was last seen at this hotel's bar before disappearing in 1947. So there's just one interesting fact. Now, for those of you who don't know who Elizabeth Short is, she's the victim of the Black Dahlia murder, which we will be covering later on. I think we'll do an episode of that. It's an interesting and really mysterious story. So it's right up Odd Reality Radio's alley. But things didn't really get better for the hotel or its reputation, and in the 1950s and 60s it became known as the place to go when you're at the end of your rope, and it was riddled with suicides.
I heard about one where they actually landed on somebody else.
Right. In 1962, Pauline Otten, who was 27, she threw herself from the 9th floor after arguing with her husband. Only she didn't kill just herself. She landed on a pedestrian, 65-year-old George Giannini, killing them both instantly.
Was there ever any speculation of homicide due to the fact that she was just arguing with her husband?
I don't know. I didn't really look into that one too much because of how many other strange and sickening stories this hotel seemed to harbor.
I didn't know that she was arguing with her husband just before that.
Yeah.
I just actually...
well,
whatever. A
little later on down the line in 1984 and 1985... Richard Ramirez, or the Night Stalker, you may have known him as, he stayed in a room on the top floor of the Cecil Hotel in the middle of his murderous crime spree, in which he was convicted of the 13 murders after being captured by an East LA neighborhood he was spotted in. Now, this is an awesome story. Have you ever heard about how the Night Stalker was captured?
No.
It's good. So, he was captured after becoming the focus of media attention when he was finally identified as the Night Stalker. And the story goes that August 30th, 1985. He saw his face on newspapers and television and fled across the Santa Ana freeway, where he attempted to carjack a woman, where bystanders then chased him through neighborhoods, eventually capturing and beating the shit out of him with metal bars in their hands and feet and holding him until law enforcement came.
Wow.
So that's a pretty awesome story to tell you that, you know, an East LA neighborhood captured one of our day's most notorious serial killers.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck down there.
No, so that's why. Well, and we can go stay at the Stay on Main. I think we ought to consider doing something like that and going and checking the place out and seeing how likely some of the things that we're about to talk about are.
Yeah.
So, just 5 years later, an Austrian journalist named Jack Unterweger was said to have stayed in the hotel as a morbid sort of homage to the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez. And while Unterweger stayed there, he murdered 3 prostitutes, but he had been convicted in a prior murder in 1974, which you mentioned that when we were doing research earlier, you mentioned that the 3 murders that he was convicted of in the Hotel Cecil incident, he did the same thing that he did in 1974 and strangled them with their bras.
Yeah, he actually beat them with their bras, I guess, just whipped them with them and then strangled them with them. Yeah, it's some kind of weird, I don't even know. I'm not
prior
serial killer psychologist, so
elaborate. He was released after the conviction in 1974. He did his time in Austria, and he was released in 1990. And obviously, he quickly began killing again, because in 93 is when I believe he was caught and in the Hotel Cecil incident, and was convicted of the murders. And in 1994, he ended up committing suicide and really didn't serve time, but now serves time in purgatory.
It's a good place for him. Yeah,
no sympathy for those types, personally.
I'm pretty sure he bypassed purgatory, though. Went straight to hell.
Well,
pretty sure. I would guess that he wasn't exactly like.
I bet they're both
on a weekly
in hell.
basis.
Him and Richard Ramirez. And I bet they're burning on their own pikes that are up their asses and through their throats. Mm-hmm. But
bra strap hooks through their eyelids.
We can only hope, right? Now, to fast forward from the mid-90s to February of just last year, 2013, to kind of put things in perspective, Hillary Clinton steps down as the Secretary of State, succeeded by John Kerry at this time. And another really interesting moment in news was Girls Gone Wild filed for bankruptcy. So, to catch us up...
So we're not going to see that anymore?
I don't think so, man. I was kind of upset to hear that.
I'm really kind of in a bad mood now.
Well, it's not going to get any better, because we're about to talk about the ELISA Lam incident.
Isn't that new, flavor for the water?
Oh, yeah, it's the new Crystal Light.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's bad.
It is bad.
On February 19th, after residents of the Cecil Hotel had complained of low water pressure and a funny-colored, funny-tasting water, a maintenance worker discovered the body of 21-year-old ELISA Lam in one of the 4 rooftop water tanks that supplied the water to the entire hotel. So this specific tank supplied the water for the showers and the sinks. That's pretty
convenient.
Disgusting.
And how many tanks were there?
There was 4.
4? Yeah, okay.
There was 4 separate
tanks. And that
tanks.
one that's all it did?
That was the one that supplied for showers and sinks, yeah.
That seems fishy.
It seems disgusting to me. But what other water sources are there? I mean, really, is there well, I guess there could be for washers and dryers and things of that nature, but wouldn't it all be interconnected? I don't know how hotels work, I guess. It's really not that important after you hear what happens. Now, after the fire department
it is important.
Came and...
It really is. How did she end up in the one that happens to be the one responsible for your sinks, because
Well,
that's where
that's
you're going
true.
to consume the water. Could have been out of 4 tanks, she just got the lucky one
Good point.
that poisons everybody with her remains.
Well, and we'll talk about something that kind of leads down that path a little later.
Okay.
With the fire department coming out, they had to cut the girl's body out of the tank. And one report I heard was that she had been in this tank so long that, and it was about 2.5, almost 3 weeks that she'd been in there, that when they went to pull her out, they went to grab her, and her skin was so waterlogged that it began to slough off like a sweater or a t-shirt.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, that's... I forgot to mention there should be a disclaimer at the first of this episode. I think this will be... I know it's a little too little and a little too late, but disclaimer, this isn't going to get any prettier.
Yeah, that happens to people who in the ocean, like if they are floating around in the ocean for too long, like say they're shipwrecked or whatever,
Right.
and then if they do get found, even though they still can be alive, I've heard that their skin will be so waterlogged or whatever, and it'll slough off. Or whatever.
That's
It's
just
like they're alive.
terrible.
It's insane. I don't know if it could be total bullshit that I just
No,
made
it
up,
sounds pretty
or
accurate.
something that I read somewhere.
I think
along
I
the lines.
actually remember seeing one of those I Can't Believe I Survived shows or something where a guy was in the ocean forever and got
crazy.
stung by a bunch of jellyfish and had something similar to that. So yeah. But either way, dude, that's just disgusting.
Yeah, it is.
Well, further investigation says that the tank that she was found in was 3/4 full, and the tank's metal latch could be easily opened, but the doors to the rooftop were locked and secured with an alarm.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
It is. Well, and some people have speculated that it could be she just accessed one of the fire escapes on the side of the building and used that to climb up to the roof. But I don't know. I haven't looked enough at the side of the building to make that judgment call as of right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, this case is still currently under investigation, and actually I found out recently that it's been closed.
Oh, really?
For now, it's just a cold case. It's not been solved, but it's just... basically, they say she crawled in herself, essentially. But some people say that the police have supposedly targeted the hotel staff as potential suspects who could have turned off the alarm or accessed the roof, which, you know, that if you're going to ask me, that's who I would suspect. Personally, if I'm going to go with a down-to-earth answer. But there's a couple of theories.
Simplest ones are
lead
usually
to.
the correct ones. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the more wild-eyed ones.
Oh, and there's plenty. Now, according to a phone interview with Elisa's best friend, her best friend's behavior displayed on the surveillance footage, which we will include in the show notes, and you can find on YouTube. There's multiple cuts of it, multiple theories, so go ahead and check it out. But her best friend, Mai Vo, says that her friend's behavior on this surveillance footage was completely unlike her, and she suspected that her friend had been drugged. Now, another friend of hers, Amanda, received a postcard on March 7th, which I thought was kind of strange because that was a rather long time after she had gone missing and been reported so. But it didn't divulge any shocking information, but her friend said that there was some shocking information, but she didn't divulge that shocking information. And so there's actually a photo, and I'll include that on the website as well, a link to that photo there's an Instagram photo of this supposed thing, of this postcard, but it doesn't have the whole message. It just has kind of a section, and it mentions Ryan Gosling, and...
What is it, blacked out?
No, it's actually like it's not been censored or redacted at all. It's just a too close kind of a picture. Maybe it's just a thumbnail of it. I don't know. I wasn't able to find a really good picture. In fact, the only one I was able to find was on a Chinese website, because apparently in China this is a pretty big deal, because this girl was a Chinese American or a Chinese Canadian tourist, and she was, supposedly on her first trip traveling alone, and was supposed to be gone only a couple of months, and she even started a blog about this trip. And according to a post on her blog on January 27th, which is the day after she checked into the hotel, supposedly, she hoped that her, quote, Mexican and Italian creepers would leave her alone, and she said that she felt like she was their prey. which is a strange statement to make.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how likely that is that it's actually her, because there was a couple of people take these things way too far, and they make up these websites and these Facebooks later on after these incidents happen with the Boston bombing and this case. And there's people that are just being sickening about it, in my opinion. And so I don't know necessarily if that's all true, but on a really bizarre side note, you mentioned something earlier about a disease or something like her being in the water specifically for a reason, some sort of, maybe she could be infecting them, fishy, or it could be
that she would, if she climbed into one. I mean, and then also, like, how are the tanks laid out? Is it like the furthest one to get to? Is it the first one that you would come across? I believe
it was one of the front ones.
So just. Oh, this one's easier, closer. That makes sense. If it was like in the far back,
right?
Whatever, then you'd be like, well, why would you go to that one?
Right. Why would you specifically target something harder to get to? Yeah, exactly. Good point. Well, a bizarre outbreak of tuberculosis, a drug-resistant strain of tuberculosis. Allegedly, 4,500 people in the area were exposed to this tuberculosis. And it was reported just 3 days after the discovery of Elisa's body in the tank. Now, another strange thing about this specific outbreak was the kit used to test for this tuberculosis was named Lam ELISA. Exact same spelling, just reverse the role.
Yeah, that's one of those weird, like, it's going to sound super crazy, I guess, but like one of those Illuminati things where they just like tell you exactly what's going on, but it's just hidden in plain sight, and you don't even think about it or associate them together, and it's just like dun 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 dun, it's right there.
Well, it doesn't sound super crazy, because aside from like
the super crazy part, then.
Well, here we go. Let's tie some reality to it then. The maintenance crew theory, that we mentioned earlier, that the police had suspected, and that we said seemed like would be the most likely suspect, a maintenance crew or a member of the hotel who had access to turn these things off, or to, obviously, there's only one angle of the elevator of this hotel footage. Is that really the only surveillance camera in this entire fucking hotel? I don't think so.
I think you're probably onto something. So where's the rest of the footage?
Exactly. So it could be a maintenance worker, and that kind of lends to that theory. But again, if it is a maintenance worker, it could be a maintenance worker who's assisting in a satanic ritual. And what I mean by that is it could be some sort of satanic ritual sacrifice, because there was strange graffiti found on the roof near the tank right outside where she was found that was Latin, and it said Fecto cunt her summa, which to translate is in effect a complete cunt. And some theorize that the handwriting found on that picture of the postcard resembles that of this same handwriting. So who's to say that it wasn't her with her own hand writing her own death note, essentially giving more power to this satanic ritual, so to speak, and making everything that much more rewarding for the sick bastards who were sacrificing.
Yeah, you'd have to have a lot of influence. If you were, say, the guy who was sacrificing her, the hotel worker or whatever, how do you say that to the cops there's no other footage, there's no other this, or did they just stop recording altogether, and then oh yeah, we just forgot to record that night conveniently, then you don't have to have, I guess, influence or power to not get that.
Well, how about this? We're right in the heart of LA, which I've heard stories of. Well,
they're not corrupt
actors. Oh yeah, good point. Hollywood, they're all real and all that, but no, I mean, there was incidents in the case that we mentioned earlier with Elizabeth Short and the Black Dahlia that the police were covering things up with a local doctor who had actually been targeted and bugged. They wiretapped him. They found him actually committing a murder on this tape, and they covered the whole damn thing up.
Why?
Because I don't know. He was Probably. That's the thing. I was going to allude to it. If we're in the heart of LA, there's a likelihood that there's a lot of power-hungry people. Now, there's speculation that the Illuminati is doing things with child actors. And who's to say that this isn't one of those situations where they didn't have a child actor and they thought that this would be some sort of beneficial sacrifice, and the hotel worker gets paid off by these rich LA Hollywood types. Who knows? This is just a good spot because we can pay to not be seen.
Yeah, it makes sense. Aside from the whole sacrifice and satanic ritual or whatnot, she was the cause of this tuberculosis, you say? What was it?
I don't know necessarily that she was the cause, but yeah, it was a tuberculosis outbreak that was actually a drug-resistant strain.
Days after the first
incident was reporting, was 3 days after.
And was it near or in the hotel?
It was within the proximity of the hotel. It was on Skid Row. I'm talking like 2 or 3 miles within proximity.
So then she would have had to have something in her body, right, to cause that?
Right.
Not just a regular... I mean, honestly, I don't know if a dying person, just a regular healthy person thrown in a water tank would cause something like that.
Right.
Just because it's disgusting and rotting flesh and whatever. It's not good for you, I'm sure. But I'm just wondering if you have to have something, like if she, say, went to the doctor a day or two before, got some shots, some immunization, some fucking whatever to come into the States. I don't know.
Right.
And
good point.
Where did she get this tuberculosis, this new strain or whatever it is?
Right.
You know, where did that come from if she, in fact, was the carrier? So you'd have to look at what were her days prior to the Cecil Hotel event. Right.
Well, what's strange about that to me is the fact that it was a drug-resistant strain. The fact that it was just, I mean, the normal, conventional methods of treatment weren't working at treating this. That's something that scares me. Who's to say that it wasn't the CDC?
Yeah.
You know, something along those lines that they wanted to test something and they thought, that wouldn't look good, though, because you don't want international issues at all. And she was,
she was
Canadian-Chinese.
She was from Canada,
yes.
Though, right? So
yes.
She was
Canadian-born of the Chinese heritage, and both of her parents, I believe, were of Chinese descent and directly from China. So, but another one of the theories that really, is a little unsettling and somewhat sums it up. And what's strange is all of these have some relevance, but this one is the ghost or demon theory, that a demon disabled and unlocked this rooftop access and basically led her in a possessed state to her own death. And the thing is that watching that video, I'd buy it. I'd buy that theory. You watch her arm and it's just insane.
I'm pretty sure she was like a Manchurian candidate that was being activated by HARP infrasound.
Yeah, like we talked about.
That explains why she was able to bypass the alarms. And that
she'd been an activated agent, like in Dollhouse.
And that's how they put the drug in the tank. She just either that or they relocated the secret entrance to the underground secret agent facility to that tank, and it used to be the other tank, and so she just climbed in the wrong fucking one and drowned.
Oh man, they forgot to reprogram her.
Yeah, they fucking changed the tanks on her.
Well, that's a pretty interesting theory. Now, another theory that my wife actually brought up that, I thought was kind of plausible, and it's pretty down to earth too, is the copycat theory. And what I mean by that is someone who was a bit involved emotionally with the 2005 movie Dark Water starring Jennifer Connelly, where her daughter Cecilia moved into an apartment, and at the end of the movie, they find out that there's a girl that's been in the water tank, infecting the water supply of the hotel. And
how long prior to the actual event was that movie made? Before or after?
It was 9 years before.
Dude, this is what I was talking about, like the Illuminati putting it right in front of your face, like 9/11. You see it in all kinds of movies. Clocks on 9/11, all kinds of just random 9/11s throughout movies. And then you have, 9/11 happens. And that's what I'm talking about with, they put it right out there and say, look, it's in, and they own entertainment biz. I don't know who the Illuminati are. There is some influence, secret influence, some powerful influence that controls these images and messages that get put out.
Right.
Who the fuck are they? I don't know. But it's to the T. What were they getting infected with on the movie?
I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't seen it. I want to now. I heard it was horrible.
But that's just insane.
But it's something that I want to look at. Exactly. And another type of copycat it could be is that she actually made references to...
Shit.
Have you played Left 4 Dead?
No. Oh, wait.
The zombie game on Xbox?
No.
Okay, I haven't played all the way through it, but apparently ELISA Lam left on one of her blogs a comment about Left 4 Dead. And apparently the plot for Left 4 Dead is allegedly you escape through a water tank.
No way.
Yes.
There's some crazy stuff with this story.
So she made comments or references to that. So that's another one that lends to the possibility of this copycat theory. And then it ties into, like you said, to the fucking satanic rituals or the Illuminati. But another one that kind of blows my mind was that frequency-based mind control that you kind of mentioned.
Just fucking right.
There is some legitimacy to that. We actually found a video, and I did some research on a guy that did a deep trance meditation, which appears to be a type of remote viewing, perhaps. And the guy's name that does it was Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. And he says this entity was responding through simulation of sound waves that were directed at her head. And that was a direct quote. So the entity was responding through stimulation of sound waves that was directed at her head. That's what he said in his deep trance meditation. Now, whoever posted this video goes on to suggest that it could be a form of this V2K technology or voice-to-skull technology, which was actually developed and patented back in, I think, 1974. And if you Google voice-to-skull technology, you should be able to find a link or two of interest. I think there's like 2 million different links.
Shit.
And we ended up finding one that shows patents that actually date back more specifically to 1973 through 1989 of this specific voice-to-skull technology, which is really, really strange for sure.
Yeah, it is strange, and I wonder how they project this voice-to-skull. Is it like a voice-to-skull gun?
I don't know. That's one thing is, listening to this video, it's cut into 2 segments. You can find it on YouTube. We'll link it in the show notes. But the thing that I found interesting about it was he was really detailed on some things that seemed to be accurate with the case. And I don't know how much research he had done prior to. Who knows? I mean,
yeah.
But it was really strange, some of the things he was saying. He had some points where he was saying outside of the elevator, the video that you can see, outside of the elevator, there was a guy with a helmet, some sort of almost like a bike helmet, like a bullet bike helmet or something that had a light or a beacon in the middle of the forehead that shot a power beam or a beam wave, a sound wave, frequency wave of some sort, and it controlled her. And so that's why, when I mentioned this, the entity was responding through stimulation of the sound waves that were directed at her head, quote, that's something that kind of stood out to me during that section. I thought it was really strange. And
does he ever speculate who is
he actually
government
later on he gets pretty specific, and he walks you through the entire incident and walks you through it's kind of hazy obviously through how she gets to the roof, but he gets to the roof and then walks you into the tank and essentially just says that she did it on her own, but it wasn't under her own will. Yeah. And there was some dark figure. And I'm just paraphrasing, don't quote me on this, but there was a dark figure near her or near them during this incident that essentially was the power player in the whole thing.
Makes sense why you wouldn't have more videos. Somebody high up the chain, you know.
And again, this could all tie back into a couple of the other theories. In fact, they could all somehow sickeningly tie into each other.
Oh, I'm sure they do all somehow tie together in some way. Most of these situations like these have lots of different, you know, connections, I guess.
A lot of sources, yeah.
A lot of dots.
And unfortunately, if we have this many sickening bastards, let's just hope that we've got at least double, maybe triple that of the good guys. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sure we do.
And I think that with this...
There's way more of the good guys than there are the bad guys. It's just, unfortunately, the bad guys seem to have all the good shit.
Well, I think it's maybe because they're so fucking loud. We just need to have the good guys be a little louder, and that's kind of what we're doing with Odd Reality Radio, is we're lending a voice to a couple good guys that really just want to get some information out to people so that they can feel a little more empowered on their own and a little more educated about their own lives and the reality that we're all a part of.
Yeah. Sounds like I don't know what I'm going to say next. So,
well, then it must have been good, if I'm leaving you speechless.
That was great.
Well, on that note, we should all investigate life through the lens of possibility. Until next week, I'm Ty West.
I'm Joshua Ray.
Take care.
Peace.
The music on today's episode was provided by Mokhov. You can find more of this at mokhov.net or link through at bit.do/oddrealityradio.